uninvited to the party, and called a mistake. Now they're begging nonstop. I remember the exact second everything shifted. Not just a bad moment, the kind that punches a hole through your chest and leaves you gasping for who you thought you were. It was a Saturday afternoon. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere special, just errands, the kind you forget 5 minutes after doing them. And then I turned the corner onto my brother Harrison's street. At first, I didn't register it. The cars, the music, the crowd spilling out into the front yard. But then I saw the minivan, my uncle's, then my mom's silver SUV, my cousin Vanessa's blue hatchback, the entire family's driveway parade. And that's when it hit me. There was a party happening, a big one, at Harrison's new house. A bouncy castle was swaying in the breeze, kids screaming in joy, adults chatting under canopies. Someone had even rented those tall patio heaters. The music was loud, that curated family BBQ Spotify playlist that only Harrison could love. I pulled over and just sat there, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I checked my phone, nothing, no message, no call, no invite. I opened the family group chat. The last thing was Harrison's selfie with mom and dad, captioned, "Couldn't have done it without my people." I wasn't in that photo. I wasn't one of his people. At first I thought, maybe it was a surprise party. Maybe I was invited, but the text didn't go through. Maybe I'm overreacting. But I wasn't naive. I was just still, somehow, stupidly hopeful. So I did something I never do. I called him. He picked up, distracted. Music in the background, laughter, clinking glasses. "Yeah?" he said. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "I just drove past your place. Looks like something's going on?" Silence. Just the party noise in the background. Then he said it. "No, why would we invite you?" Matter of fact. Not even mean, which somehow made it worse. Just cold. Like I was a name on a guest list that got crossed out without thought. I laughed nervously. "Right, that's a good one. But seriously, should I come by or—" And that's when I heard her. My mom. Clear as day, right behind him. "This house isn't for mistakes like you." Then, click. He hung up. And I sat there, car idling, music still drifting out from the party like a cruel soundtrack. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in that thick, choking silence that only comes when someone rips out the last piece of who you thought you were. They didn't just exclude me. They erased me. And you know what? Maybe I needed it. Because something inside me, the part that used to cling to the idea that maybe one day they'd see me, hear me, choose me, that part died in that moment. And what replaced it? Not bitterness, not revenge, not yet. Clarity. Clarity that I would never again beg for space at a table that was never set for me. That I'd stop trying to shrink myself into a version of their favorite son. That I'd stop answering to people who only ever called me a disappointment. But here's the thing they didn't count on. That rejection they served on a silver platter, it was a spark. And 4 weeks later, they weren't laughing anymore. They were calling. They were pleading. But I wasn't picking up. Driving away, the silence in the car was deafening, broken only by the echo of their words. "Nobody wants you here. Mistake like you." It wasn't just the immediate pain. It was the crushing weight of a lifetime of being the afterthought, the less than, the designated problem child. This wasn't a sudden twist. It was the brutal culmination of our family's story. Harrison was always the golden child, effortlessly fitting the mold my parents created. I was the contrast, the one who questioned, who struggled with their expectations, who never quite measured up. From scraped knees blamed on me when Harrison shoved me, to his car crash covered up while I got the lecture, the pattern was set early. He could do no wrong. My existence was often framed as an inconvenience to their perfect picture. As we got older, this dynamic shifted from childhood antics to my unpaid labor. I became the family's IT department, available 24/7. Harrison's elaborate smart home, my project, mom's perpetually locked Apple ID, my recurring task, dad's phishing scam recoveries, my technical support calls. I fixed their Wi-Fi, set up their devices, carried heavy furniture. Anything they needed, I was the default call. The thanks? Usually non-existent or wrapped in dismissive comments. My life, my achievements? Irrelevant. Their problems, their drama, Harrison's updates, the only currency of conversation. The housewarming wasn't just missing a party. It was being publicly, undeniably designated an outsider by the two people who were supposed to be my anchors. Sitting in that car, the years of being used and discarded crystallized into a single, searing realization. I was a tool, a convenience, and nothing more. And tools, when they're no longer needed or when they dare to feel, are simply cast aside. Sending that text, the quiet promise of consequence, was the first step onto a different path. I stopped answering. Their calls went to voicemail. Their texts stayed unread. It was jarringly simple, and their reaction was immediate, almost comical in its predictability. My mom called, not with concern, but inconvenience. "Things are stressful," she sighed, expecting me to fall in line. When I pointed out I wasn't free labor, she hung up. The first face-to-face test came at my cousin Vanessa's birthday. I went anticipating the tension, but determined not to give them the satisfaction of my absence. The air was thick. My mom's disapproving look was instant. Then Harrison arrived, frustrated by a simple Bluetooth speaker, demanding I fix it. When I refused, suggesting he ask Mom, his annoyance flared. He called me names, pushed my shoulder. The years of simmering resentment boiled over, but I kept my voice level. "Touch me again and see what happens." He retreated, slamming a door, making a scene he'd later, no doubt, blame on me. My mom, the expert manipulator, cornered me next, muttering about me making a scene and needing to be grateful for inclusion. Grateful? After being called a mistake? The absurdity was staggering. My dad, the silent enabler, pretended not to hear any of it. I left soon after, the familiar hollowness in my chest now hardening into something colder, more resolute. Reflecting later, the sheer volume of things I did for them hit me. The endless tasks, the late-night calls, the problems I solved while they offered nothing but judgment. It wasn't just about fixing things. It was about managing vast swathes of their digital lives. Accounts, passwords, system setups. I held the keys to their modern existence, not because I was nosy, but because they mandated my involvement in their laziness. They called me a mistake. They cast me out. They took everything they could and gave nothing back. They expected me to wait patiently until they decided they needed me again. But sitting there, connecting the dots between their dependence and my knowledge, a new feeling emerged, cold and clear. I wasn't thinking of breaking laws, but I saw the leverage. They thought they had erased me from their lives. They were about to learn that the person you erase is the one who knows exactly where all the weak points are. The game wasn't over. It was just about to change. The days after Vanessa's party weren't just about silence, they were about calculated action. My decision solidified. Passive withdrawal wasn't enough. They needed a clearer understanding of what happens when you sever the ties to the person who keeps your modern life running. My leverage wasn't physical, it was digital, administrative, built on years of their laziness and my unwilling service. I knew their systems inside and out, not through malice, but through necessity. Now, that knowledge was power. First, Harrison's smart home. My project, his dependency. He bragged about it, but couldn't manage the basics. Every password, every setting was known to me. He hadn't changed a thing. My opening move was simple. Disable the conveniences. The auto-unlock routines, the timed lights, the climate schedules, all off. I left the core functions like Wi-Fi running. The goal wasn't total collapse, but frustrating, confusing inconvenience. Let his smart house feel dumb. His calls and texts began almost immediately. Thinly veiled requests for help with the buggy system. I left them unanswered. Mom joined in, her texts demanding I fix her son's issues. I ignored her too, at first. This led to the awkward grocery store encounter. She cornered me, stressing Harrison's difficulties, expecting me to fold. When I refused, stating clearly I wasn't free labor, she slapped my arm. A small, public act of frustration. I just walked away. Next, I targeted his administrative life. I had set up his HOA portal. I knew his login. Their HOA was notoriously strict. I began using the portal to flag minor but real violations. Trash cans out too long, patchy grass, fence disrepair, parking on the lawn. I wasn't inventing issues, just ensuring existing ones were noticed. Soon, the fines started arriving. Harrison, of course, suspected me. He complained to Dad, who called me. I let it ring. It was profoundly ironic. For years, I'd managed their deadlines, their systems. Now, I was using that same knowledge to ensure they faced consequences for their own neglect. Meanwhile, Mom's chronic Apple ID problems persisted. Her frustrated messages clogged the family chat. My only reply, pointedly directed at the group, "Ask Harrison. He's the genius." Her desperation grew. She showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door, demanding entry. I watched through the peephole, silent. After failing to gain access, she yelled "ungrateful" through the door before leaving in a huff. Harrison's wife, Cecilia, made her move then, texting privately, attempting mediation. She spoke of keeping the peace, asking me to fix smart home issues that affected her directly. Garage lights, cameras. My boundary was firm. Not my problem anymore. When she pressed mentioning family harmony, I told her peace required her to talk to her husband and my mother about their behavior towards me. She stopped messaging. Uncle Harper called next, deploying the classic "be the bigger man" plea. He lamented Harrison's stress. I countered by asking when Harrison ever helped anyone else. He retreated to the old excuse, "You know how your brother is." I ended the call. Their old tactics, guilt, entitlement, dismissal, were losing their power. They were struggling, confused, unable to fix the problems I either wasn't fixing or was subtly causing. The game was changing. The subtle inconveniences I'd set in motion began to compound, creating a perfect storm of technological and administrative headaches for my family. Harrison's smart home wasn't just buggy anymore. It was actively contrary. Lights flickered on at random hours, the temperature swung wildly, and the garage door became a manual operation, a daily physical reminder of the convenience they'd lost. The HOA fines, meanwhile, were escalating from warnings to significant costs, forcing Harrison to confront the tangible price of neglecting his property, a price he clearly felt I should be paying. Mom was still locked out of her digital life, unable to perform even the simplest online tasks. Her social media presence, her link to her friends, and the wider family gossip network effectively severed. Their initial annoyance quickly curdled into genuine frustration, then desperation. The calls and texts intensified dramatically. My phone became a monument to their escalating panic. Missed calls stacked up, Harrison, Mom, Dad, even a few more tentative ones from Cecilia. Though she quickly seemed to retreat after my clear boundary, voicemails piled up. Some just sighs of exasperation, others mumbled complaints or confused questions directed at my answering machine. The family group chat, once a casual stream of memes and Harrison's self-promotion, devolved into a platform for Mom's increasingly frantic, all-caps messages about technical woes and vague pleas for help, punctuated by Harrison's stressed outbursts about fines and malfunctions. I watched it all but remained silent, an observer behind a shield of calculated detachment. Their attempts to force contact grew bolder. Ignoring calls wasn't enough. They needed a direct confrontation, a way to break through the barrier I'd erected. That's when Harrison showed up at my apartment. No warning, no text, just the aggressive, impatient ring of my doorbell. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there, phone in hand, face tight with frustration. He looked like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. Good. I opened the door just a crack, not inviting him in. "You need to fix my house," he stated, his voice tight with suppressed rage, bypassing any pretense of pleasantries. "Nothing works. Mom says you're doing something on purpose." His entitlement, even now, was breathtaking. "I'm not your fixer," I replied, my voice flat, denying him the emotional reaction he seemed to crave. He tried to push past me, forcing the door open wider. I blocked him, holding firm. He shoved my shoulder then, harder than at the party. A clear act of aggression meant to intimidate. Years of being pushed around, literally and figuratively, snapped something inside me. I shoved back, meeting his force with my own. Get off my porch, Harrison," I said, my voice low and dangerous. His face contorted with anger, the golden boy facade cracking under the pressure. "You're ruining everything," he yelled, his voice rising, drawing the attention of neighbors. "You always make it about you." The ultimate accusation from my family that my pain, my reaction, was just selfish drama, inconveniently centering a narrative that was supposed to be about them. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just looked at him, absorbing the familiar, toxic projection. Then, I slammed the door in his face. He stood out there for a few minutes more, presumably yelling or just simmering, before finally leaving. The silence he left behind felt different this time. Not empty, but charged with the certainty that the point of no return had been crossed. Later that night, the phone rang. It was Dad's number. I knew it wouldn't be Dad. It was Mom using his phone as a last resort because I wasn't answering hers. I answered, bracing myself. Her voice was shaky, laced with what sounded like tears. "Hey, why are you tearing this family apart?" she sobbed, launching into the predictable guilt trip. "All your brother wants is some help. You know how stressed he gets." Always about Harrison's stress, never about the stress they inflicted on me. "Nobody wanted me at the housewarming, Mom," I interrupted her performance, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "Remember?" The sobbing stopped abruptly. Silence. Then, a weak, forced attempt at reconciliation. "That was a mistake," she mumbled, her voice losing its performative edge. "We didn't mean it." "A mistake? Not inviting your son, calling him unwanted, and a fundamental error in front of the whole family, then hanging up. That wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate act of cruelty. And we didn't mean it? They absolutely meant it. It was the distilled essence of how they saw me." "Yeah," I said, letting the cold finality hang in the air. And I hung up on her. I saw later, through a mutual connections feed, that Cecilia had posted a passive-aggressive rant on her private story about neighbors who can't mind their own business and cause problems that lead to fines. She was complaining about me, the source of their HOA woes, without even knowing it. A small, grim smile touched my lips. They were so consumed by their own manufactured crisis, they couldn't see the strings being pulled or by whom. They were mad, stressed, confused, and utterly incapable of navigating the world without their designated fixer. Everything they relied on, everything that made their lives easy, was slowly, surely unraveling. For a moment, a tiny flicker of doubt. Was I going too far? Then I remembered Harrison's face when he called me unwanted. I remembered my mother's voice calling me a mistake. I remembered 20-plus years of being less than, of being used, of being blamed. No, I wasn't going too far. They had built this mess, and now they would live in it. They still had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The chaos I'd set in motion, or rather, allowed to unfold by withdrawing my constant management, reached a fever pitch. Harrison's perfect new house, his symbol of success and independence, was becoming a source of relentless frustration. The smart home glitches weren't just minor annoyances anymore. They were daily battles against systems that seemed to actively resist him. HOA fines continued to arrive, tangible evidence of his inability to manage basic responsibilities I'd always handled. My mom's digital paralysis was complete. Her inability to access accounts meant she was missing bill deadlines, adding financial stress to her technical woes. Uncle Harper called again, his voice tinged with genuine concern this time, reporting that Harrison was venting to anyone who will listen, completely overwhelmed and blaming everyone but himself. Cecilia's private story complaints confirmed the atmosphere of domestic dysfunction. They were drowning in problems they were utterly unequipped to solve. Their individual attempts to contact me escalated into a constant barrage. My phone was buzzing nonstop. Calls came in rapid succession, Harrison's number immediately followed by Mom's, then Dad's. If I didn't answer, they'd leave rambling, stressed-out voicemails. They weren't even trying to hide their desperation anymore. The polite requests for help were gone, replaced by urgent, demanding, sometimes even tearful pleas flung into the void of my unanswering phone. They couldn't fix it. They finally truly understood they couldn't fix any of it without me. Their carefully constructed world of convenience and managed appearances was crumbling because the person who quietly held all the pieces together had walked away. And then it happened. The message I knew, deep down, was coming. A notification popped up. It was the family group chat. I hadn't muted it entirely, just archived it, occasionally glancing at the stream of their unfolding panic. But this message was different. It was a new thread, or perhaps an old one I was suddenly added back into. And it wasn't just Mom or Harrison. It was a collective cry for help. I opened the chat. Mom's message was first, typed entirely in frantic capital letters. "Please tell us how to fix this. We didn't mean it." Right there, an admission buried under panic. Well, we didn't mean it. The words that cut me to the core, the ones that labeled me a mistake, were now being disavowed, not out of remorse, but out of urgent need. Harrison chimed in immediately after, "I'll pay you. Just come over." The golden child, reduced to offering payment for the help he'd always taken for granted. Money, the only language he truly understood, offered as a bribe. And then Cecilia, the mediator who'd previously retreated, "Let's meet for coffee. We can work something out." A negotiation, an attempt to smooth things over now that the chaos was directly impacting her comfortable life. I read their messages, and I didn't feel the surge of triumphant glee I might have expected. Not bitterness, not even anger, not anymore. Just a profound, cold sense of stillness. I thought about the housewarming, the cars in the street, the laughter I heard, my brother's cold voice, my mother's cruel label. I thought about all the years before that, the blame, the dismissals, the endless, thankless fixing. I thought about standing on my porch, being shoved by my brother, accused of ruining everything when all I'd done was stop enabling their dysfunction. They didn't not mean it. They meant it completely in that moment. They meant I was less than. They meant I was a problem. Their current distress wasn't a revelation of their love for me. It was a panicked reaction to losing their free, indispensable resource. They didn't want me. They wanted the services I provided. They wanted their easy lives back, and they realized too late that I was the price. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What could I say? What was there left to say? They had reduced our relationship to a transaction, and now they were trying to buy their way back into my good graces, back into convenience. But the price was too high. The cost had been paid over a lifetime of small cuts and major betrayals. There was no fixing this in the way they meant. There was no going back to how things were, because how things were was the problem. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I didn't accept. I didn't forgive. I simply left them on red, just like they had done to me so many times. The ultimate quiet refusal. The power had shifted entirely. They were begging, and I was finally utterly done. The climax wasn't a shouting match or a grand reveal of my sabotage. It was this quiet moment of reading their desperate pleas and choosing absolute final silence. They were at their lowest point, begging the person they'd called a mistake to save them. And I turned the page, reading their desperate pleas, the offers of money, the hollow, "we didn't mean it," and choosing to leave them on, read felt like the quietest, most powerful act of my life. There was no explosive confrontation, no grand mic drop, just silence from my end. A silence that mirrored the one they had imposed on me at the housewarming. But this time, it was on my terms. They didn't stop trying immediately. The calls lessened in frequency, but didn't vanish. The texts still came sometimes, softer now, tinged with confusion and a continued misplaced sense of grievance, sometimes even attempting guilt trips. But I held firm. I muted the group chat, letting their messages collect unseen. Unanswered calls went straight to voicemail, their voices adding to a growing digital archive of their unraveling. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply unavailable. And the world didn't end. Their world, the one I'd propped up for so long, continued, albeit with significantly more difficulty for them. There was no magical fix for Harrison's smart home woes, no sudden understanding of HOA regulations, no easy recovery for Mom's locked accounts or missed bills. They were left to navigate the very real consequences of the dependencies they had fostered and the resource they had alienated. I wasn't coming to save them. Interestingly, the only family member who didn't join the chorus of pleas was my cousin Vanessa. She'd seen the dynamic for years, understood implicitly that something fundamental had shifted. And Uncle Harper, after my blunt comment about him mowing Harrison's lawn if he cared so much, also ceased his mediation attempts. Some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. For me, life changed profoundly, not because of dramatic events, but because of the absence of drama. The constant background noise of their needs, their problems, their thinly veiled contempt, it was gone. My phone was quiet. My apartment felt peaceful. I wasn't bracing for the next crisis call, the next favor demanded, the next dismissive comment. I had time and mental energy for myself. I went to work, saw my friends, and rediscovered the simple pleasure of mundane moments, like sitting on a park bench on a sunny afternoon, completely undisturbed. This is what happens when you treat someone like a convenient tool, like a mistake, and expect them to remain compliant and available forever. Eventually, they realize their own worth, their own peace, is more valuable than the toxic scraps of family you offer. They realize they are not obligated to set themselves on fire to keep you warm. I'm not going back. Not to the endless fixing, the blame, the emotional manipulation. Even if they somehow genuinely changed, a prospect I find highly unlikely, I'm not sure I care to re engage. The person they pushed away, the person they called a mistake, is finally free. If they want their lives fixed, they have to figure it out on their own. I'm no longer their mistake to fix. I am simply done.